In a world full of billions of resumes, is it even possible to stand out anymore? I feel like if you haven't sipped tea with Her Majesty the Queen after a night of fundraising festivities with the Obamas, then your chances of a resume standing out for that dream role are essentially non existent. And I have something to say about that because even though I'm not a Kensington Palace fellow, I've had so many other experiences that make me who I am and give me the passion for my career that I have today. Where I'm from, my family, my parents, my siblings, my daughter, the work that I've experienced, the things that I've accomplished. Those things all matter too. And I want to share them in a different way.
Hey,
And the Oscar goes to.
you gotta open it up.
I had a resume, but I wiped it clean and created the Palimpsest. So instead of boring you with a whole list of things that I think might make me cooler than everybody else, I'm just going to show you who I am, the real me, through 10 stories of impact. Story 1, a snowflake. I grew up in Chicago, so a snowflake for this first story is fitting. It's a short one, only meant to set the scene and give you an idea of where I'm from. My mother immigrated from the Philippines by herself when she was only in grade school, and my father, who's biracial, his mother is African American and his father is English American, grew up on the South Side in Hyde Park. And that's significant. And it's significant because being multiracial really shaped the childhood experiences of both myself and my siblings, for better or for worse. And so I think the snowflake not only represents Chicago and how damn cold it is, but also this idea of things, unique things, being able to grow and take shape in the cold. Story 2, blank paper. Blank paper is my second story because blank paper is the first thing that really served as a canvas for my thoughtfulness and creativity. And I know for a fact that that came from my grandma, my father's mom. She was one of the first African American female publishers in the city of Chicago. And when I was born, she was at the height of her publishing and nonprofit career. I, on days where we didn't have a babysitter, would go with her to corporate meetings with ComEd and her other sponsors and listen to her negotiate these contracts and give consulting advice on D&I to these companies that wanted to do business in Chicago when D&I wasn't like a hot thing. And so that's really important to me to acknowledge that in my story, because while my professional experiences technically started further down the line when I was in college, to me they really started there, working with her and watching her succeed and do what she loved to do in environments where it wasn't easy to do so. Story 3, the black hole. black hole is literal and figurative. It compounded with the story on blank paper really explains my deep passion for social impact and inclusion. This story is called Black Hole because my father literally has a hole in his body from a case of extreme police discrimination and misconduct. The year before I was born, he was shot several times by plainclothes members of the Chicago Police Department who bombarded my grandmother's home and opened fire on him in a case of mistaken identity. And he nearly died from the incident. He, after 12 surgeries, had to learn how to walk again, how to eat again, how to hold a book. And so growing up, even though that incident happened the year before I was born, it always feels like it happened yesterday because I watched him deal with all of the psychological and physical effects of what happened to him. And so the black hole is a representation of that. It's a representation of the hole that he'll always have in his body, literally, and the hole that we'll always have in our family because of that part of him that will always be gone. Story 4, A Hot Pot. The hot pot is about the struggle. It's that one struggle story that so many of us have. And for my siblings and I, it's the hot pot. We grew up in HP, but my parents didn't make HP money. We only lived there because after my dad got shot, he wanted to raise his family as far away from the city as possible, so he moved us to Highland Park, and we struggled. While most people there owned their own homes, my parents struggled to pay rent for far smaller homes, and so sometimes you gotta make the hot pot. You know, rent is due, and especially in those winter months when heat bills are high, and then you have utility bills and cable bills, you have to pay rent, and sometimes you have to just miss the other stuff. And, you know, cold showers and below 0 degree weather are nobody's best friend, so you have to break out your hot pot that you normally use to boil greens, fill it with water, bring it to a boil, carry it up to the washroom, and take a hot bath. And I think that it's experiences like that that really pushed me to do well in school and really motivated me to not only do my best, but to be my best. I think it's why I started a chapter of the Best Buddies Foundation for Students with Disabilities while I was a junior, because I understand intimately what it feels like to be on the outside looking in. And I think it's also why I worked so hard to earn my full ride to Howard, because I knew for me, a scholarship was my only way. Story 5, The Mecca. The Mecca is Howard University. I earned a full scholarship to the School of Business Honors Program and learned so much there. I would start by saying that I had an amazing mentor who guided me the whole way through and really encouraged me to view my Howard experience from the lens of being an explorer of opportunity and an entrepreneur of thought and idea. And she really nurtured the latter, which helped me carve out a very unique place on campus. There are like so many things I could talk about. I was interning at the Haitian Embassy my freshman year after the earthquake, helping with resource allocation to families in need on the ground in Haiti. I earned a 4.0 my freshman year. At our honors awards banquet, I was acknowledged as the outstanding freshman of the year. I was the community service director my sophomore and junior years, helping build and foster unique service opportunities for students at the school and organizations and educational systems across the city. I was the executive president of the program my senior year. I interned at ConocoPhillips. I interned at Google. There are like so many things that I could talk about, but I think the thing that best defines my experience there and describes who I am and what I care about is the Howard Hackathon. I actually created our first Howard Hackathon when I was a junior at school, and I did so because I felt like even though I was still a university student, given the roles, the leadership roles that I had on campus, I actually had the power to be able to open up opportunities to students that wouldn't normally get to experience something like a hackathon because the schools that they attend are so strapped from a resource standpoint. So I, one day, my junior year, opened up the School of Business doors to students in grades 6 through 12 across the city and invited them to come and team up with some university students in the honors program and work on a business idea that they felt would positively impact the world. And it was a really cool experience because you have like these young kids who are coming from these lower income areas being able to interact with university students at Howard who many of them had those same childhood experiences, but they're looking up to these students because they've actually made it to university and they're doing things and they're successful. So that was like the first layer of like coolness and uniqueness. But like when you dig deeper, these students actually had like amazing ideas. Like I'll never forget the youngest team that we had present that first year presented an idea for the parking meters. Like they created basically a parking meter app idea. And it was like the student's idea. It wasn't like a Howard student's idea. It was like the grade school student's idea. They presented it and it just totally blew our panel of corporate sponsor judges away. And then like, of course, a few years later, it actually became a real app. It was that experience, like building out the program, getting sponsorship for the program, getting student buy-in, getting the school's buy-in from, the DC public school system. It was like that experience that really defined who I was at Howard and who I continue to be in my professional career. I absolutely hate that in America we only foster such a small percentage of our talent. And I really feel like there are so many good ideas that are hiding in communities where resources aren't plentiful. And whatever I can do as a professional to be able to hack those circumstances and extract those ideas, that's what I really love to do. I love to bring opportunity to people who wouldn't otherwise have it. And so I think for me at the Mecca, that's what really defined me. Story 6, Mustang. So unpoetically here, this story is called the Mustang because when I graduated Howard with my full-time ride to Google, I packed my life up, moved out to California, and bought my first car, which was a Mustang. So still symbolic there because it was a big moment in my life where I was able to like make a big purchase on my own and like take care of myself and support myself. My experience at Google was great. I started off at the associate level managing Google Apps at the enterprise level for large businesses, so like Fortune 500 companies, helping them move over to our Gmail messaging client and the Drive and Cal collaboration tools that would in turn help their CIOs create a more effective and efficient organization, leveraging the Google technology. And every quarter in that role, I was able to beat my quota, either meet or exceed my quota. And so my second year at Google, I moved over to cover both apps and search. Search was a little different because in the apps role, I was working with like CIOs at Fortune 500, CTOs. In the search role, I was working more with CMOs, e-commerce people, web design people, helping them figure out how they could make their online transaction experience more seamless and more profitable for the company. So that was really fun. Again, was able to meet or exceed my quotas there, and then convinced my manager to let me spend 20% time on the Google Maps product because it really intrigued me. The API was really interesting to me. And so I did some work over on that team and realized that they were lacking a demand generation business. And so because I had been in the ISA role and the sales role my previous 2 years, I understood how to programmatically build out that part of their business in a way that would be beneficial to the reps and to the organization overall. So I was able to convince the director of the Maps team to let me pilot the program, and the pilot was successful. We were able to triple average deal size, which was great. And I moved over formally to that role during my last like 12 to 14 months at Google. So in building out that part of the demand generation business, I was managing all of our campaigns. I was working with marketing, managing a marketing budget, doing all of the analysis and reporting, not only at like the rep level, my level, but also the partner level, and doing some reporting analysis for our director too through Salesforce. And so that was a really great experience for me. Also, like towards the end of that role, it was really cool because I was able to be more creative with the kinds of campaigns we were doing. So like rather than just selling licensing to the Google Maps API to a company and saying like, hey, here, use this API to like build a store locator on your website, I was actually able to scale some of the campaigns through our premier partners in North and Latin America, and have my team of ISAs work on basically what we call repeatable solutions campaigns. So actually building something out of the API that addressed a specific need, and then selling that 80% developed solution to companies who could then customize it. And I think like one of the big things there was that we were able to do like the Domino's Pizza Tracker app, which was really cool. And I think like especially like a few years later, it gained a lot of traction and people are using it and people love it. So that was like the sum of my experiences while I was at Google, like really focused on sales and building sales programs and relationships at the client level. Story 7, roller coaster. The roller coaster is a metaphor for what happened after I left Google. So despite having had a wonderful experience and career there, I ultimately decided to leave because when everything was happening in 2015 in Ferguson with Mike Brown, I immediately connected to that, and I instantly knew that I wanted to leverage my education and my tech background in order to address social impact issues like police discrimination and misconduct from a product and solution standpoint. And I tried to do it while I was at the company. It ultimately didn't work out, so I took it outside and committed to it fully and did it on my own. And there were like so many great moments in that experience, so many lessons that I will forever carry with me throughout my career. I got to meet with so many great social impact leaders at the university level, students doing such cool work on their campuses. Got to have conversations with them around what tools they needed in order to help accelerate their movements. Met with global nonprofit organizations like the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, Rockler and Cancer Foundation, Rock Nation. Talked to them about what tools they needed in order to better engage and activate their supporter bases. Just a really cool experience from a relationship building standpoint. I also raised my first round of funding, which I had never done before, and that was a very eye-opening and educational experience for me. And those are things that made it so worth it, just being able to have those conversations and meet those people and really validate that what I felt the social impact space needed was true. I think looking back critically and really, post-mortem trying to assess where I went wrong, I know that I went into it with such raw determination and raw passion that when it came to making some business decisions, I wasn't thoughtful or critical enough. And I think specifically some of the people that I brought onto the team were not necessarily the best people for the company. And that was like a lesson that I had to learn. While there are like so many talented people, so many amazing people who are great at what they do, when you're building your own company from the ground up, you have to not only bring in awesome people, but awesome people who are the right fit for what you're creating. And I think I didn't do that. And so that was, definitely a lesson for me, a very hard one to accept and to move forward with. But ultimately I did. And I think that even though my first venture wasn't necessarily a success, I ended up walking away with a lot more than I went into it with. I met the person who ultimately became my husband and father of my child, and in the process. And so that's something that I will always be grateful for and will absolutely never regret. And mark my words, I will do it again, and I will be successful at it the next time around. Story 8, My Aloha Flower. My Aloha Flower is the story about what happened next. I failed in my first venture and knew that I wanted to take that experience and use it to learn more and go deeper and be that much better as an entrepreneur, a founder, a leader, and a professional. And so my next career move was actually to join Emerson Collective in their energy accelerator, which was based in Honolulu. I had never been to Hawaii ever, So it was kind of like a sight unseen kind of thing, but also an opportunity that I didn't want to pass up. I was able to work on their marketing, events, and communications team, where I was helping host events around equity and access, which for them was essentially diversity and inclusion, helping make sure that the kinds of companies and founders that we brought into the accelerator were diverse from a gender perspective, race, orientation, and then also just the general mission of the company, making sure that we had a diversity of thought in that sense. I hosted and coordinated several big events, several marketplaces in low-to-income parts of California, where we just kind of went down to the community level to hear from residents, really understand what the energy issues that they were facing were, and then also talk to local entrepreneurs to understand how people that are in these cities and intimately familiar with the issues are addressing them, to see if we could help. And that experience for me was wonderful, because I got to view the startup space from the other end. I got to see things through the eyes of an investor and an accelerator, and that really helped me even further develop my ideas around how an organization should be run, how a founder should lead, and how products can be effectively built and maintained. And so that was just a totally awesome experience. And then to be able to do that from a D&I perspective, where I was making sure that, you know, founders that are traditionally minorities were represented in our cohort, was the absolute best. And to top that whole experience off, towards like the latter end of my fellowship with Emerson in Hawaii, I gave birth to my first child, Montana. Story 9, Montana.
Hi. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I had a resume, but I wiped it clean and I created this, the Palimpsest. Because whoever my next employer is, I want you to hire me not because of 1 or 2 pages that you read over 6 seconds. I want it to be because of this. Because you saw this and you heard me and you know who I am, where I come from, the experiences that drive me, the projects that I've worked relentlessly to bring to a success, the things that I've been unsuccessful in. I want those things to be the determining factor of my candidacy. And so that's why I've created this. And I realize it's a risk. I realize it won't resonate with everybody. But for those that it does, I can't wait to meet you. I can't wait to talk more about your mission and mine, and how together we can achieve some really cool things. Thank you.